On this Sunday night, foreign interference. How police believe this BC property is connected to a covert Chinese government campaign.
Is this a national security investigation?
I really can't say.
New details in a Global News exclusive. Fighting influenza. A particularly deadly flu season claims another young victim.
Nothing seemed urgent enough until it was too late.
Building a wall. The Republican state stacking shipping containers along the Mexico border. Plus, NASA makes a splash. The Orion spacecraft's successful landing sets the stage for a return to the moon.
The difference is we're not going for a 2 or 3 day camping trip. We're going back in a sustainable way.
Global National with Farah Nasser. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin with allegations of Chinese government interference in Canada. This weekend, RCMP officers descended on a non-profit centre in BC, the headquarters of a group that says its purpose is to promote unity within the Chinese community. But a police source close to the investigation says they're probing allegations that include coercion and threats against community members. Rumina Daya has the exclusive details.
Is this a national security investigation?
I really can't say.
No comment from RCMP national security officers investigating China's foreign interference activities in Canada. Interviews were conducted at the Wenjiao Friendship Society, a non-profit in Richmond, BC. Multiple residents tell us the Mounties were asking about whether they'd seen anyone in uniforms or witnessed any suspicious activity.
RCMP introduced himself and asked me about it, what was going on in this area. There is some falsifying the passports and currency.
A source close to the investigation says the police action was part of a wider probe also underway in Toronto into a Chinese government campaign that uses threats and coercion against community members. No answer at the door Saturday, but over the phone, a society director confirmed police paid a visit. Huawei Su said he was surprised the police were asking questions. He says he doesn't know why. He also rejected that the building is linked to allegations Chinese police stations are operating in Canada. International human rights group Guardian Defenders says it has found evidence of several secret Chinese police stations operating in Canada, more than 100 worldwide.
It is a very dangerous example.
Victor Ho, former journalist with Tsingtao Daily, Canada's largest Chinese-Canadian newspaper, says the alleged secret Chinese police stations are a blatant violation of Canadian sovereignty.
It is a bad signal that the Chinese government exercising their power without limits and without any international laws.
In recent weeks, the RCMP has acknowledged it was investigating allegations China operates police service stations in the Toronto area. The Chinese embassy has rejected the claims. Back in Richmond, still no official comment from RCMP as to why they targeted the Wenjiao Friendship Society. Rumina Daya, Global News, Richmond, BC.
To an update on the surge of respiratory illness that is taking a tragic toll. This winter is on track to become one of the deadliest flu seasons for Canadian kids in over a decade. At least 10 children have died from flu-related illnesses across the country. And as Heather Yourex-West explains, hospitals are warning the worst could be ahead.
In West Kelowna, BC, an entire community is in mourning. 9-year-old Isla Lawsett passed away in late November from an infection related to the flu. An infection Isla's family believes wasn't recognized by doctors until it was too late.
Our little Layla's gone, but if by her passing something can change to help it doesn't happen to anybody else, that would mean a lot to my little baby.
Canada's National Flu Surveillance Network is reporting 5 pediatric deaths so far this season, but that number will soon rise, with more up-to-date provincial numbers suggesting that at least 10 children have died from flu-related illnesses.
Yes, so we should be alarmed, and we should try to do everything we can to reduce the numbers. The concern is you've had 10 pediatric deaths, and this is still very early in the flu season. And so, we still have several more months to go. go.
COVID, flu, and RSV have hit children hard all at the same time, leaving pediatric hospitals struggling to cope with the worst season since H1N1 first struck in 2009.
I think that this is the busiest I've ever seen it. We're seeing larger numbers than 2009, and certainly far exceeding what we see most years.
At BC Children's Hospital, staff are preparing for the possibility that single rooms may soon need to accommodate 2 sick patients instead of 1. The onslaught of illness has already forced pediatric hospitals across the country to cancel surgeries and redeploy staff.
What I find upsetting is that it's a vaccine-preventable disease and that we've had, up until now, low immunization rates in children.
Public health officials are urging parents to get their kids vaccinated against the flu as soon as they can. Masking is being encouraged too. While there are signs that the flu season may be peaking in parts of the country, the virus is still very much a threat, with hospitals bracing for some very difficult weeks ahead. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
Turning to Ukraine now, and renewed Russian attacks targeting the country's power grid. In the latest strike, Iranian-made drones knocked out electricity to 1.5 million people in the southern port city of Odesa. Over the last 8 weeks, Ukraine's prime minister says 40% of the country's high-voltage infrastructure has been damaged. Mackenzie Gray has the story.
To watch the World Cup in Odesa, Ukraine, you'll need to head to a bar like this. Running on a generator, it's one of the few places that has any power. The light of the moon and flashlights, the only way the 1.5 million residents are able to see at night. The situation in Odesa region is very difficult, says Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, adding it will take days to fix the 2 power plants Russia attacked. Zelensky blames kamikaze drones that Russia bought from Iran. The Shahad 136 are a favorite tool of the Russian army, and they have a Canadian connection. A Ukrainian think tank found Ottawa-based company Talisman Wireless has a part in those drones. The company acknowledges an antenna they make is being used, but they also say they've never sold any products to Iran.
These are not controlled goods, right? So the transfer of these pieces of technology don't require an export permit.
The power is also out in Bakhmut, a town of 70,000 in eastern Donbass. It sustained heavy Russian shelling. That's forcing residents into heating tents, one of the only places they can charge their electronics. Andrei Hadamaka has lost power and water at the house he shares with his mother, relying on this boat outside his front door to collect rainwater. Their heating system is likely the next thing to give out, but that doesn't concern Andrei's mother, Ali. We'll stay strong until our victory over Russia, she says. The U.S. and British governments both say that the military collaboration between Moscow and Tehran is likely to continue, with the next big purchase potentially being, Jeff, an Iranian ballistic missile.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa tonight. Thanks, Mac. 34 years since a jumbo jet was destroyed over Scotland. A Libyan man accused of making the bomb is now in custody.
Their loss has been ever present in our minds.
270 people died when Pan Am Flight 103 from New York to London was blown up over the town of Lockerbie. It remains the deadliest terrorist attack ever in the UK. At the time, the U.S. immediately pointed the finger at Libyan intelligence operatives, and the FBI has now taken custody of Abu Aguila Mohammed Massoud, who's accused of building the explosive. The only man ever convicted in the case, Abdelbasit Al-Magrahi, died back in 2012. Back here at home, amendments to Canada's gun control legislation are sparking debate. The Liberals say the changes would ban assault-style weapons and keep communities safe. But there's concern and confusion over what weapons are included and what the impact the new rules could have on hunters, farmers, and Indigenous communities. Marnie Blunt has more.
The topic has been one of contention. Ottawa's proposed amendment to Bill C-21, gun control legislation that would ban hundreds of models of firearms in Canada, creating heated debates in communities.
They know that they were misleading this House.
And in the House of Commons Thursday.
Mr. Speaker, the mission here is to get guns off the street and
MP Raquel Dancho was booted from question period Thursday after she refused to apologize for calling a Liberal MP a liar following comments related to Bill C-21.
I'm going to ask one more time
for her to apologize, the honourable member, for Kildone and St. Paul. She's not going to apologize. Thank you.
But for them to get up in the House of Commons and say Conservatives are part of the problem when we're standing up for Canadian hunters, it is a lie.
This as the Assembly of First Nations voted to publicly reject the bill this week, citing it could infringe on treaty rights. There is also confusion over which weapons would be banned and concerns over many hunting rifles being outlawed. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says his party supports the bill and the aim to keep communities safer, but has concerns over the amendment.
We don't want to see any laws that breach the treaty rights of Indigenous communities, those treaty and inherent rights to be able to hunt and to provide for their families and live a traditional lifestyle. So those are concerns we've raised, as well as we understand the needs of hunters and of farmers to be able to continue to do what they do.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the goal is to take away assault-style weapons, and the exact list of banned weapons is still being worked on.
We understand that there are concerns by hunters and farmers that we're going after their shotguns and rifles. We are not, and that's what we're going to make sure with fine-tuning of the legislation.
The topic will be before the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security again this week, as members will be debating whether or not to call back some of the witnesses who've already been before the committee. Marnie Blunt, Global News, Ottawa.
A border wall built with shipping containers. Coming up, the new front line in the fight to control the U.S.-Mexico border. Welcome back. Immigration and the U.S.-Mexico border have been political powder kegs since Donald Trump first announced he was building a border wall. And Republicans are now resorting to desperate measures to stem the flow of border crossings. In Arizona, shipping containers are being stacked 2 by 2 in open areas along the state's border with Mexico. Although illegal, it's the governor's final act before he hands the keys to his office to his Democratic successor next month. Mike Drolet has the story.
This is the new front line in the Mexico-U.S. border crisis. Since August, Arizona's Republican governor has been stacking shipping containers along the border, work that has continued despite the federal government, which has jurisdiction over the border, telling them to stop. But with no resolution in sight, activists have now stepped in.
They were digging this road, and they refused to stop excavating until we threw ourselves in harm's way, really, to block the excavator from being able to do the work. But we felt it was important to stop the progress and the destruction.
The border issue has deteriorated over the past year. Since October 2021, the U.S. Border Patrol reported a staggering 2.2 million migrant encounters at the Mexican border. It's not any better on the Mexican side, which last week detained over 16,000 migrants over a 4-day span and dismantled their makeshift camps. The migrants, who are primarily from Central and South America, had hoped to put pressure on the U.S. to allow them to enter the country. Republican-led Texas, for one, has responded to the crisis by sending busloads of migrants, over 13,000 so far, to northern Democratic-led cities like Philadelphia, all the while stoking extreme sentiments with unproven political rhetoric.
And they say every state's a border state. I don't think so. We get overrun every day by the cartels, the criminals, the drugs, the fentanyls, the human trafficking.
As the political fight continues in Washington, pro-immigration critics continue to argue the ineffectiveness of the border wall when compared to the hunger and violence migrants are running away from.
I don't think it's a solution in any way from the climate and the ecology point of view. From the immigrants are going to find other paths. They're going to continue coming. So it's not going to solve anything.
Without a solution soon, the desperation among migrants is only going to get worse. Mike Drolet, Global News.
Rent relief. Starting tomorrow, Canadian renters can apply for a one-time top-up. The details just ahead. If you're a renter, you may soon qualify for a new federal benefit. Starting tomorrow, people with low incomes can apply for a top-up to the Canadian Housing Benefit. Ottawa is offering a one-time payment of up to $500 to help pay the rent. Families earning less than $35,000 or individuals who earned less than $20,000 last year could qualify for the payment. Every year, the federal government gets tens of thousands of requests under access to information laws, also known as ATIP. Now, the vast majority come from everyday Canadians, and under the law, the government has 30 days to respond. But new data shows that Ottawa meets that deadline just 30% of the time. Our chief political correspondent, David Akin, has more on what critics are calling a broken system.
Federal access to information laws are key tools for accountability and transparency, and they're not working.
The ATIP system is broken. It's broken by lengthy and unreasonable delays. These delays obstruct access to justice.
Experts say urgent reforms are needed, mostly to deal with a culture of delay, delay, delay.
Access delayed is access denied.
Mr. Green, you have 6 minutes.
New Democrat Matthew Green is one of the MPs on a House of Commons committee pushing for changes to the Access to Information Act.
So in order to have, I think, adequate parliamentary oversight, in order to have public trust, there needs to be quick and efficient access to information.
As an illustration of the problem, Global News submitted identical access to information, or ATI, requests to a dozen different government departments back in June 2020. Only one department responded in the legislated timeline of 30 days, just one, the Finance Department. National Defense took 105 days. The RCMP took 753 days. And last week, the Privy Council Office sent over the records we requested 907 days after we asked for them.
It really creates a problem where, people aren't able to get the information they need in a timely way.
Canada's Information Commissioner, an independent officer of Parliament, has made 18 recommendations to fix the system, including more money and more staff to process ATIs, combined with a host of rule changes. Most of all, she says, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cabinet have to do better.
Action speaks louder than words. Leaders must ensure that their institutions live up to the legislative obligations.
But it's more than just that. Several experts, including the Information Commissioner, say that a working access to information system helps build trust in democracy, trust in government institutions, and helps weaken the spread of disinformation. But the flip side is also true. A broken ATI system, like the kind we have now, reduces trust in government and makes it easier to spread disinformation. David Akin, Global News, Ottawa.
Up next, mission accomplished. A happy homecoming for NASA's Orion spacecraft. It's one giant leap for private spaceflight. With the help of SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket, a Japanese startup called iSpace just launched a lunar lander from Florida. It's hoping to become the first private company to land on the moon. If successful, it hopes to deploy 2 robotic rovers, one from Japan and another from the United Arab Emirates. It's making a slow, fuel-efficient journey, aiming to touch down on the moon in April. And while one spacecraft went up, another came down. NASA's Orion capsule splashed into the Pacific today after weeks spent orbiting the moon, wrapping up the first phase of the Artemis program that aims to see astronauts return to the lunar surface. As Jennifer Johnson reports, the successful mission is one small step in a plan to boldly go where no one has gone before.
America's new ticket to ride to the moon and beyond.
A splashy ending to an historic space trip. The Orion capsule, part of NASA's Artemis 1 mission, landed in the Pacific Ocean.
Splashdown.
After over 3.5 weeks in deep space, ushering in a new era of space exploration.
We go back to the moon to learn to live, to work, to invent, to create.
And liftoff of Artemis 1. Orion, carrying 3 high-tech mannequins and a Snoopy doll, traveled over 64,000 kilometers past the moon to analyze how that affected the dummies and how the capsule held up under extreme conditions never encountered before.
The spacecraft performed so well that we were able to start looking ahead at Artemis 2 and thinking through how else can we push the boundaries on this flight.
Artemis's goal is to return astronauts to the lunar surface this decade, establishing a sustainable base as a stepping stone for future human exploration of Mars. Something out of Hollywood may no longer be a fantasy in the years ahead.
There were seeds on board, and so we're going to be able to see how the radiation environment that we just went through affects the seeds, because when we look at going to Mars, we know that we're probably going to need to grow some crops like they've done in the movies and on TV.
The next step, as early as 2024, is the launch of Artemis 2, a manned flight around the moon and back, followed by the first lunar landing of astronauts with Artemis 3.
We're going to put the first woman on the moon, the first person of color. The difference is we're not going for a 2 or 3 day camping trip. We're going back in a sustainable way. Longer periods of stays on the lunar surface.
Sending humans to Mars is at least another decade away, but with this successful mission, the exploration of that planet by real astronauts is closer than ever. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
And before we go tonight, a celebrity shout-out for 2 BC teens is going viral.
Sweet dreams are made of this. Who am I to disagree?
Eurythmics singer-songwriter Annie Lennox shared this video on her Twitter account, saying, "Wowza, gentlemen, you're amazing. Thanks for choosing our song. P.S. Who are you?" The answer is Nanaimo, BC's hip-hop duo Funkanometry, Carlo Rush and Jackson Fryer. Their dancing videos picked up millions of views on TikTok earlier this year. The pair used the platform to connect with audiences during the pandemic when they couldn't perform live. And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada is the Christmas lights in Bowring Park in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. We love seeing your Canada, so please keep emailing your festive photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Donna Friesen will be back here with you tomorrow. Have a great night.